This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to ageekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leader, today I'm honored to have Garrett Rice on the show. He has spent over 25 years building innovative products and teams. He's worked at Apple, and now he's the co-founder of a company called Callings.ai, which we're going to talk a lot about today. And he's going to bring some of his expertise with the AI industry, but also with some of us people that may be interested in expanding our careers and finding other jobs. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
If you don't mind, tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into product to begin with, and what that process has been like for you, and why on earth you decided to start a company called Callings.ai.
Well, I was in business school in Colorado, and it was an era where not many of the companies in Colorado were high tech, and I realized pretty quickly I didn't want any of the roles or jobs that were available. I really wanted to work with computers and technology, and so I actually offered my services for free first to Apple, so I could get that on my resume. And then I heard about Steve Jobs' company Next, and I decided to go and do that, and offered that for free, both working as a campus consultant and tried to get that on my resume. And that was the beginning of my career in high tech. Eventually, I got an opportunity to move out to the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. And, I've been working on tech products ever since. And I've always leaned toward the product side because I feel that's where it all begins. If you don't have a good product, then everything else is kind of a waste of time. And it's also, it's fun to build things. And I've always enjoyed that. And so, I was early in my career as a product manager, and, I've done some stuff on a partnership side and strategic alliances side as well. And my career is really focused in those two areas, and I haven't seen fit to try something else. I'm not a great programmer. And so that's how I got started. And I think your next question is how we got into Callings. Yeah. After many years in high tech, I was trying to figure out what to do next. For the first time really in my career, I was looking for a job without a master plan on what I was going to do next. And I've been in the Apple ecosystem a very long time, and I didn't really want to go back there. I'd been there and done that. And I met my partner while we were both part of a job search group. And at the same time, he and I had both been through some of these technology transitions that happen. And we saw AI, and it was very clear that was going to be a huge one. And so we wanted to engage with that. So we dove deep into AI. And while we were doing that and looking for our next role, we came to the conclusion that for most job seekers, things were getting pretty nightmarish, and that AI could be an assist for them on that. And then we also felt that AI was taking over the hiring and recruiting side, and that they needed something to level the playing field. And so that was the impetus for the start of Callings.ai. And, we're in about a little over 2 years into our journey now. We've been building a platform for job seekers, and we feel at this point that we've got a fairly robust, comprehensive, total job hunt platform. And, we're beginning to sign up users and get the word out about what we're doing.
So let me ask you this, because you mentioned that you felt like you needed to level the playing field. Did you feel like AI was kind of making it more difficult for job seekers because it was more focusing on the companies that were searching for candidates and kind of weeding them out, or how did that kind of that path? What do you mean by leveling the playing field?
Yeah. So for the average job seeker, our premise is the job market has changed dramatically just in the last 5 to 6 years.
No, 100%. Yeah.
And some of that is because of remote work, Zoom, not having to be geolocated to where your job is. Though companies are trying to claw that back after the pandemic, I think unsuccessfully, by the go back to work mandates. Um, but behind that, and I think more more powerfully, what's been affecting the job market is there's been a reduction in the friction to apply for a job, and everything is online now. And most resumes are no longer reviewed initially by a human being. They're reviewed by applicant tracking systems at the hiring companies. This is, for any company, probably over 150 employees. They're going to be using an ATS, and those are increasingly AI driven, and they're reviewing all the applicants before they review them, right? So there's no real human being looking at those. And most of the jobs, I think the average job post in America now has at least 250 applicants. Wow. So for every job, you're in a lottery. And by the way, the popular companies, it's thousands. If you're at one of the leading companies, every job gets thousands of applicants. And so they're processing all of those using AI. And if you're applying for those, you're behind the eight ball. You have, you're very unlikely to be considered, and you're going to get rejected for the smallest thing because there's so many people who are applying. And oftentimes, it's because of a lack of ingenuity on the part of the applicant tracking system in terms of how it evaluates things. Some of them are good, some of them are really not well thought out, and so they only look at keywords, for example, in the job description. If you don't have every single one of them in your your resume, they just reject you. Even though you could be an amazing candidate, and and companies seem to be laying off human recruiters, and HR is being cut back. And so, that's the background as a job seeker. And what we have done is studied all the different steps of that and tried to accelerate the job hunt for the candidate on each of those steps. So, everything from, and it's I think it's about a 7-step process for a job seeker. And most job seekers are not even familiar with what a job hunt is all about or how to do it when they start. But you have to understand where you're going, what you want. And usually if you're in a job hunt mode, sometimes that's hard to come up with. You might be depressed or surprised by what's happened, you lost of confidence, or you just may not know where you want to go next, which was, for example, where I was at, when we started this venture. Then if you do, you have to find jobs that you're likely to be considered for, because these applicant tracking systems are brutal. So, you have to find jobs where you have a good shot. And most applicants, they have no way to evaluate that. Then you need to do research on the job. Is this the right fit, the right culture, the right company? What's the company doing? Do I want to be doing that? Then you need to apply. In the modern environment, that means you need a custom resume and cover letter for every single job that's steered and articulated in the parlance of the job post and the company that you're applying to. And if you get through all of that, then you get to probably the most important step, which is you need to network into that company for that job and find the people who are connected to that job. And if you do all of that, you're hopefully lucky enough to be considered for that role. Then you need to do some really serious interview prep, because modern interviews are full of tests and gotcha questions, and they really go after you both personally, behaviorally, strategically, technically, and so you have to be really prepared for those. And then hopefully you have an opportunity to get the job. And so for each of those steps, it's become much more brutal. And we've built a platform for each of the steps that I've articulated and a few others. We include some coaching as well on our platform, and community and background and information about the job hunt. So all in one platform. And, our our perception is that the modern job hunt is workflow. And it's, so we've built our platform kind of like a CRM where, we help them carry through each of the steps. And for the average job seeker, they need to apply to 51 jobs on average to get a job. And those statistics are old. We think that number is probably over 100 now.
Wow.
And so, what we're trying to do is make those 50 to 100 applications easy. So you can just get up and do them and go about your day, walk your dog. And, when we talk to job seekers, most of them really struggle with this workflow. It's hard to stay motivated in an environment like that without any good positive feedback, right? The most likely feedback you're going to get as a candidate is negative, a rejection, or more likely ghosting. And so, what we've tried to do is build a platform to say, hey, this is, what is it they say on The Mandalorian? This is the way.
This is the way. Yeah.
You must apply, right? You must apply thoughtfully and strategically to the roles that you're interested in, but you also need to do a lot of them. And, and so for each of those steps, we have, a detailed workflow, AI powered. We help, for example, at the first step, we go through the Socratic method with our users. We look at their resume semantically, and then we ask questions about their resume and their background. And when they answer those, we can generate some powerful reports for them to help them identify their own needs and wants, help them build their own personal brand. So, that's the first thing. We call that My Insights. And on our platform, they end up with a report showing, based on their resume and their answers and responses to questions, what the ideal job would be for them. We help them lay out what their goals and wants are based on what they say. And again, for some reason, it's difficult to suss this out of your brain without that type of help, right? Otherwise, you just sit there and it's like, what do I really want? But if you can get somebody to pull it out of you with questions, then you're going to get pretty close. And once you have that, those are the questions people ask you, right? What are your needs? We're so glad to be interviewing you today. What are you looking for in a role? Those are the questions. And so by sussing those out and putting those in black and white in front of our users, they know where they're going and who they are and what they want to do. And we also provide a really detailed personal brand report. We help pull out, what are their key skills, key accomplishments, what is their personal brand in 20 seconds and in 2 minutes. And these are the things that come up over and over again for a job seeker. When you say you're looking for a job, the first question they ask is, well, tell me about yourself. And that's, for many people, a very difficult question. They know intuitively, but, you have to take the time to put it down and practice a response to that. And so that's, for example, one of the first things that we do. In the platform, we also looked at job boards, and we were really disappointed that most of them are keyword based. And the problem with keyword searching is if you don't get the keyword right, nothing shows up. And there's another problem too, which is lexicon. So, I'll give you a great example. At Apple, if you're in charge of a product, you're a product marketing manager. That's the title that they give you at Apple. I was the product marketing manager on Final Cut Pro in the early days. If I took that title and applied to a job at Adobe, I would never be considered for a product job because they bifurcate product management and product marketing into two roles. And so if you don't know that, or if you can't steer based on the job post, they're going to look at your resume and say, oop, nope, this is a person that's not qualified. They're a product marketing manager. They're applying for a product management role. We're not going to hire them. When in reality, I'm perfectly qualified. So, customization is key. And when you look at the job post, our AI system will redirect you to look at your resume and recast it. Not that it's not inventing things that you do. It's simply recasting what you have done in the right parlance, so that you have a chance. These are the way. Each of these steps helps you partially become successful. Doing all the steps will increase your odds dramatically. And that's what Callings is all about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I can think back, throughout my career, I've worked for an ISP, I worked for, cable TV company, a broadcast company, and things like that. And when I go through the things in my career, a lot of the terminologies are very, very different. Like, I worked for an ISP in cable television group, and they're all software developers were called developers. Yet all engineers were people that actually like laid fiber into the ground and managed the engineering part of that piece, and they were very different. Whereas, and in my next job, I came and I'm managing software engineers. It's like a very different, the word engineer is now one thing. And now I work for a broadcast channel, and like the people that manage the satellite dish and the actual transmission, those are broadcast engineers, and the
Right.
developers are, something different. So everybody has different titles. And if you just say, well, I'm an engineer, that can mean very, very different things. And like my
Yeah,
fellow dad
I
was
mean,
engineer at the shipyard. Very
that's a
different.
that's a great story. Or mechanical engineers or electrical
Yeah.
engineers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that highlights the many gotchas in a modern job hunt, right?
Mhm.
Is that it isn't one of these things, it's all of them, right? We haven't even got to networking yet. And
Yeah.
it's the most likely way you'll get a job. And, in each of these, it's trying to understand the dynamics and present it and put it into a product. Right. And that's been our goal, right? Is we know this, we've studied this, we've built, an AI system to do the right things for our user. And then the final thing, by the way, I'll say is that most of the platforms that are out there for job seekers, they're not really built for job seekers. They're built for recruiting and hiring companies. And so, they often offer a fig leaf of capabilities, but what they really want is you to just upload your resume so that they can monetize it against where they make their money, which is on the job post side or the applicant side. And and that's not sufficient for a job seeker anymore. It just isn't. They have to go through all of these tricky little steps.
Yeah.
And and so we feel like we're pretty confident that what we've done is we've built a set of tools where for each of those we're doing the right thing for the user, increasing their odds. And if they do all of them, they got a real good shot for those jobs. And then what we really want to do is bring them a lot of opportunities. Because among other things, even if you don't get every role or every interview, if you find opportunities that you feel like you're qualified for, it gives you momentum, right? And that's another part of the job hunt, right? Which we haven't talked about is the emotional impact. It's really hard, especially if you've been laid off. If you've been laid off, it's a kick to the gut, and and so the Zen Buddhists say that confidence comes from practice, right? From doing something. It could be anything as simple as washing dishes or whatever your Zen practice is. And so we want our job seekers' Zen practice to be to just apply. and success will follow.
Yep. So tell me about the networking part, because a lot of our listeners are probably, I assume they're a lot like me, and they're IT nerds. We like technology. We love to watch the latest YouTube videos about high tech stuff and AI tools and vibe coding and things like that. But networking is kind of a challenge for some of us. We're very introverted. It's sometimes difficult to get out there. And there used to be meetups that we went to, and then when COVID happened, a lot of them shut down, and there's not that many of them anymore, or they're virtual, and that's really like half as good as some of the other ones. What are some of the things that we can do, and how do you guys help out with that?
Yeah. Yeah, great point, right? I mean, overall technology is changing the way we live and is making us more distant from other people, right? We stare at the black rectangle all day
Yeah.
and don't get out. That the statistics prove this. And then at the same time, we're in the middle of a tsunami of AI generated content and AI agent based outreach. So it's increasingly difficult to contact other people because they're getting deluged by bots trying to connect with them. And we looked at this problem, and what we decided is that obviously LinkedIn is the granddaddy out there, and we wanted to work really closely with LinkedIn. We're not going to replace LinkedIn, but we feel like on the workflow side, they're not focused on that. And so when we looked at networking, what we saw is that people would go on LinkedIn and try and, say they found a job at XYZ company, they would just type in XYZ company and try and find people that they're connected to. And that's valuable. And that problem is solved, right? LinkedIn does that. But as we delved into it, what we realized is what LinkedIn is not very good at is identifying the people that are connected with the job you're applying to. So if you're lucky enough to have a first or second degree connection connected to the senior product manager job that you're applying to, then LinkedIn is very powerful. If you are applying to a senior product manager job at XYZ company for blah product, it's very difficult to find the people who are working in that group, which is where you're applying. And so we've built an AI system to navigate through LinkedIn and find the people that are connected to the role you're applying to. And we're trying to identify the hiring manager, the recruiter, somebody on the team, or somebody who works with that team. And then we present those people to you based on that job. So for XYZ, senior product manager at XYZ company, we will bring you 3 to 5 to 7 people, as many as we can find, that are working in that group that is hiring. And then we give you all of the outreach capability so that you can either email them directly to their personal email or go to LinkedIn with a simple outreach message based on your application. And are all those people going to respond to you? No way. Right. But it's a funnel, right? The job hunt is a classic sales funnel. At the top is all your opportunities, and you want to have a lot of them at the top. And in the middle is where you start trying to sort them out to make connections where people are actually interested in talking with you. That's what networking is. And at the bottom of the funnel is your interviews. And then, hopefully out of you can get several interviews and several offers. And so that middle part, is about volume, really. And what we're doing is offering that. So for every job, if we can offer you 3 to 5 to 7 people, so if you apply to 10 jobs a week, that means we can find 30, 50 to 70 people for you to connect with. And if only 10% of them respond, you're talking to 3 to 5 to 7 people a week. And if you're doing that, you're going to be successful in your job hunt. And, and for us, we make it paint by numbers. We draft the outreach messages because honestly, unless you know the person or know somebody that they know, there's not much you're going to be able to say to them that isn't pretty generic.
Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward message. Hi, I'm interested in that job in the group that you're in. I would love to talk with you about it. And so we draft that, and we have an AI prompting system so that you can reprompt or add your own thoughts and make that message come out any way you want. But ultimately, we'd like for you to be able to send that in a few minutes for each person that's in the list. And that's our networking system. And we don't feel that anybody else in the market has this. And, we built in the ability to outreach directly because we felt like LinkedIn networking messaging is increasingly spam. And so people aren't responding to it anymore. And so, we took the trouble of going out and hunting out the people's actual, verified emails. We're 99.9% confident that if there's a person that we find for you in our networking, that we can find as an accurate and working email for them. And so as a result, what our users are telling us is that, they're more likely to find the person and talk to the person. And again, that doesn't get you a job, right? So applying to a job doesn't get you a job. Networking to a job doesn't get you to a job, but they all carry you on the path to the interview. And the interview is where you get the job. And so, so we're very proud of that feature, and we're going to continue to add more capabilities to it. And the result is that through that workflow, our users are, it accelerates their workflow.
Yeah. So going through this path, and yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think the LinkedIn messaging, I've gotten to the point where now I just don't, I've got so many hundreds of unread messages that I just never even go to anymore. It's just like, I just mark them all as read and move on. So I don't see the little red dot anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're a victim of their own success, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's so many salespeople just or people trying to come on the show. God, I probably get like a dozen a week. I'll throw it through there, but
Glad I made it on, by the way, Jim.
yeah.
I guess my salesperson got through.
Yeah, it was not through LinkedIn. So, but I do want to talk about closing the deal. I guess you would say you talked about the sales funnel and going through that same approach. And I know your site, you guys offer coaching. Can you talk a little bit about the coaching and how that maybe plays into the interview portion and helping people present themselves the right way?
Yeah, so we one of our founders is a career coach, and we've partnered with a lot of different influencers and expert career coaches in the marketplace, and we do workshops with them. We have one coming up on August 19th. If you're out there and you've been laid off, go to lifeafterthelayoff.com and you can get access to a free webinar with some of the top minds in the industry. For job hunting. But what we do is, we host a monthly live workshop where users can ask questions and they'll get coached on a specific topic. Could be networking, could be personal brand, could be, ways to stand out on your resume. And after these topics are done live, we record them and have a library of those in our site. And we also have a weekly calling circle so that people can network and get together with other job seekers. And so we do all of that around the idea of, this what is it that Phil Terry, he's a famous job search expert. He says, never search alone, right? That's the name of his book. You have to connect with other people. You have to listen and train yourself on best methodologies and practices. And so we're trying to provide some of that for our user base as well. And that's part of our ethos, right? We want to be the total job hunt platform. Comprehensiveness is our goal. There's the average job seeker uses 16 different tools and services right now to do their job hunt. And I'm an NFL fan, and there's a famous expression in the NFL, which is if in spring training you have two quarterbacks, it means you have no quarterbacks. And and I think if you have 16 tools and services in your job hunt, you have no tools and services, because you can't possibly manage running around on all those different tools every day to do your job hunt. And people are doing it because all of the steps that I articulated to you, they go to a different place. So they go to LinkedIn for networking and maybe to find jobs, but they go to somewhere else in terms of trying to learn about themselves. And if they want job matches, we're one of the few places that do that. So usually you're looking at just cold job lists and are finding them, and that's not an effective way. If you want to customize resumes and cover letters, you might go to a place like Teal. And so we really wanted to consolidate that into the workflow. Because you can't manage it. Almost every job seeker we've talked to uses their own spreadsheet that they've built. So we've replaced that with a CRM tracking system. So their entire job hunt is in one place and they don't need to build a spreadsheet. Many of the people that we talk to have a Notable or a Notes application to track their communications, but it's not connected anywhere. So, if they're interviewing at XYZ company, then they have to go into Notable and find the note. So we've built in note taking. So in our system, for every job you're applying to, the custom resumes and cover letters are connected to that job. The networking contacts are connected to that job. Your notes and reminders are connected to that job. Your interview prep is connected to that job. So, this is where we're trying to cut it down so that, you have one place to live, which is Callings.ai. I think people are going to still go to LinkedIn if they find a job there that maybe hasn't been posted anywhere else, or if they find a job at a hiring company site. And we're agnostic on where the jobs come from, which is also different from a lot of the job boards. They get paid for their job inventory. We don't. And we get paid by our job seekers. And so if you find a job on LinkedIn, you can use our Chrome extension and save it to your tracker on our platform. We don't care where the job comes from. Or if you find it on a hiring company site or Indeed, wherever you find the opportunity, collect it on Callings and manage it there. That's our philosophy.
Let me ask you a question about, so I teach part-time at Winthrop University, and in the computer science arena, I'm starting to see that junior developers are having a harder time finding jobs than they did a couple of years ago. And a lot of that's because people are using, AI tools to kind of do some of the junior work, and it's kind of squeezing out some of those roles. What do you recommend to junior developers or people just getting started in the technology fields going out there, and how do you guys help them?
Yeah, no, we're hearing that a lot. And, we're also, we're talking to a lot of college students that are graduating, and, you know, the great unspoken thing right now is that the job market is brutal, especially for young talent and young engineers. For the first time in 60 years of computer science are not being snapped up.
Yeah.
It's I think AI is a big part of that. I saw a statistic last year, and I think this number is dramatically worse now, where almost 60% of hiring managers are planning to not hire and have AI replace those functions that they want. I think that's short-sighted, by the way, but that's what they're doing. And so the job market is really painful right now, even to people in tech, which has just never happened before. I think the advice that we're giving to them, and the advice that we believe in are taking ourselves, is that if you want to survive the AI tsunami, you need to be deeply ingrained in AI. And in computer science, I think the impact is going to be big. Products like Copilot and others are making it much easier to do software programming, right? In effect, you can prompt. If you have good knowledge of how to build a successful product, you can prompt the development on a lot of the code. And so our experience with Callings.ai, and when I talked to my CTO co-founder, Philippe Caillou, his reaction to what you're saying is this: the skill that still nobody has is the understanding of how to build a complete product successfully. If AI is doing the coding, you still have to be the person to do that. You still have to have the vision, the holistic vision of what the product's going to be. And so, I have thoughts on how those job seekers can find a job, but I think at the broader base, you're going to get run over by AI if you don't adopt the new methodologies for building software. And the new methodology is that your right-hand wingman is AI.
Yeah.
That you're going to be prompting a lot of the code, whereas before, you were responsible for writing every line. And of course, this is not completely true. Developers have been reusing libraries or calling, pre-written objects now for the last 25 years. But it's stepped up another order of magnitude, or another, level of the world now is that it's about prompting the concepts of what you're trying to build.
Yeah.
And so,
I think one thing I've noticed is I can go way back 25 years ago when I was in college learning how to code. We did a lot of pseudocode, writing out how things work, and knowing and having that skill set of being able to be proficient in writing out how you want something to work. What is that workflow like? And crafting that story, if you will, a lot of like product management, really, you're crafting a story, and doing that well is going to help you get better code back. But you still have to have, strong developers that understand what they're getting back and how to integrate that and test that and validate that it's actually doing the things that you want it to do. And I feel like that's where it's a little short-sighted, because if we don't bring in junior developers to learn those skills, then how are we going to have a senior developer to backfill when those people retire,
Yeah, that's a great point. How do you respond? What do you tell them, John?
I tell them that, junior developers, you have to learn how to use AI. I've incorporated into my classroom to where assignments where we used to hand code things, now you use AI to develop it, and then, review the code that it puts out. And, you have to save all your prompts. How did you prompt this? Use different tools and show me how did Gemini respond to this versus ChatGPT? and compare the different tools and which tools work better for this scenario versus this scenario, and kind of learn, where do you use Claude, and when do you use this other tool, kind of compare those. And I think incorporating it early, and I think, the education system has done a huge disservice by discouraging the use of AI, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um,
that is very short-sighted.
uh, but
Don't learn about fire, It couldn't possibly change the human race.
yeah.
Stay in the cold. Everybody, let's stay in the cold.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I told, and I'm really blessed that I went through. Our department head is really all about, making, instead of having the true academia approach of, making sure you write everything, it's more about like, what is the market demanding, and let's go after that. And I think that's, the right way to do it. So I'm really happy to be where I'm at when it comes to that. But, we are trying to figure out how, as an executive vice president, I'm not going to hire somebody that doesn't know how to use AI tools. Like that's kind of something that's what I want. I want somebody that can use all the resources available to them to solve problems. And I go back to math, yeah, you need to learn the basics of math before you start using a calculator, but my God, you need to know how to use that calculator if you want a job.
Right. I mean, I think what you're saying is exactly right. And I mean, it's really simple, right? The old way of coding, very much like, the original programs were writing, at the metal level, right? They were writing machine code.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to learn how to write machine code anymore. There's a few people that do, but most people do not, right? It's a specialty. It used to be everybody, and now it's just a specialty. And I think this is just the next progression, right? The upside of using all this AI technology is you can build a much more robust and scalable product than you used to be able to because of AI. And so your job is not to fight with AI to write the code. Your job is to use AI to build dramatically more features, right? So again, looking at us, there's no way without AI we would be where we are now with our product, right? We have a very small team, and we have more features in this product than some of the early products I've worked on at Apple 15, 20 years ago, right? With a smaller team and less time, because it's just so much more efficient. And so, yeah, I think you're right. Right. Like, yes, you were an amazing craftsman building wagons in 1904. And, and I'm sorry, but if you can learn how to manage that, you could probably learn a little bit about internal combustion engines, and this new car might make you a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said just reminds me of that Henry Ford quote. If you ask people what they want a faster horse, but we're giving them a car. And that's kind of what we got here. People wanted, more efficient libraries and JavaScript. Well,
yeah,
now just have
you just need to step up,
for
like, I'm trying to think of the right term. It's basically like if concepts are, different layers of shells, AI has let us step up to a whole different level of existence around technology, right? Where we could just type in plain language and get features and capabilities, right? Whereas before you had to hand build those, it's like Lego. And so I think the modern successful software developer is going to be using more pieces of Lego and not focusing on the Lego itself. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, we have a bunch of interns that are all students, and, and that's the methodology we're using with them to build our product. And hopefully they'll be able to take it into the marketplace, and be a new generation of developer. If I were coming out of school, that's what I would try and market myself as. I'm a new generation AI developer, right?
Yeah.
And because those, like at the same time you're saying that, some people are getting $1 million signing bonuses if they're in the right spot with the right skill set. There's these wars going on in Silicon Valley for people who really understand AI. Those people are not having difficulty finding a job, and so.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I definitely want to encourage my students to check out Callings.ai, and hopefully they can use that when they graduate to help them in the
Well, I tell you what, I would love for your students in particular, like, let's talk. I would love to set them up and get their feedback, right?
Yeah.
And, we're still learning, and we're learning a ton from our users that lead to new features. So, So anyways, I would love for I offer it to your class.
Awesome. And, before we wrap up here, how can people connect with you online if they have questions, if they want to learn more about the features of Callings and maybe sign up?
Yeah. So you can go directly to Callings.ai. And if you use Callings.ai /geek, we'll let you use the platform for 30 days free as a benefit to the listeners of John's podcast.
Awesome.
You can, we've got, I think we're /Callings.ai on LinkedIn. So you can connect with us on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, Callings.ai, on Facebook. And you can reach out to me directly if you have questions, Garrett at Callings.ai. But, like I say, we're in the phase where it's about listening to the people who are using our platform and making it better. And we got some exciting stuff coming that we think are going to change the marketplace. And so all are welcome. The way the system works, you can look for jobs and track jobs for free forever on our platform. If you use the advanced AI tools for networking or for customizing resumes and cover letters, et cetera, then we're about $20 to $30 a month, depending on the length of term that you sign up for.
Awesome. That's great. And I'll link that in show notes too. Geekleader.com. You can go there and click through. Garrett, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And hopefully our listeners learned a lot as well.
I am honored that you invited me, and I really enjoyed chatting with you, John. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.